if you have a precondition to alcoholism, it's like, imagine that neurochemical pathway is already there in your brain. It's like you could get on that bike and the muscle memory, and you'll just remember how to ride a bike. Well, because your grandfather was an alcoholic, if you have too much alcohol and get drunk, your brain picks it up like riding a bike, even though you might not have a history of being drunk, but your family does.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Rob Bray, who is a Northern Colorado pastor, entrepreneur, man of God, and family man. And he's here to share some of the real raw moments of his story and his journey and how it can make you, your life, your faith, and your business that much better. Check it out. Rob Bray.
Good to see you.
Welcome
Glad
to the
to
show.
be here.
It's been a while, man.
Yep.
We've been planning this for a while, and
Yes.
you've been moving and shaking and busy with a couple of big things you're working on.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Love listening to the show, and
Got to toast the coffee. Bam.
it's an honor.
So, man, you've got such an amazing story. I love what you're doing in the business community and the faith community and how you intermingle those to make an impact. And I just love to hear your story, man. Like, take me back to like some of the key moments that were part of your life that helped guide you to where we are today sitting here.
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Rob, pastor, business owner, more importantly, husband, going on 13 years, and father of 6.
To many, many children.
Yes. So we've got 12 through infant. Been in Fort Collins for 7 years. And we're building a church and building businesses. And so I'm doing the bi-vocational ministry life. But yeah, for me, it all goes back to being raised single mom. Dad walked out when I was 5 and had a whole nother family, and would see him intermittently. And he was a business owner. I remember thinking as I was younger, watching him, and just how business opened the door for him to do so many great things with us as a family, and pay for us to go on these amazing trips, but also got him in trouble and led to the adultery and the affairs. And I met the Lord in high school, and I committed in my heart, I'm going to go a different path. I'm going to go into ministry, right? Because that's more holy, and that's going to keep me safe. And so I was a youth pastor for a long time, but then I needed to pay the bills. So I got into the marketplace as a side hustle, initially thinking I'll just do this temporarily so I can keep doing the pastor thing. But I fell in love with it, and fell in love with just business, sales, marketing, people, generating revenue, providing for my family. And in some ways it helped me purify the ministry and the intentions, because that became more of a volunteer service to help people rather than a career to make money or some sort of platform to have influence. And so I really embraced this bivocational call after realizing that me running away from business was kind of a reaction from my dad.
I was going to ask you about that. Were you jaded by that and maybe judgmental, or perceived business a particular way? Business equals...
Yes.
You're going to go commit adultery, leave your family?
Absolutely. I remember a distinct conversation right after I graduated high school, and my dad wanted me to take over the business or begin the grooming, the pathway, the succession plan, if you will, and just jump into the business with him. And I wanted to go to college and study the Bible and be a youth pastor. And we had this big argument, and I kind of had to put this strong boundary of, I'm not going to go your path. And I think what I made up about that was, I'm never going to be in business or in the for-profit world. But that wasn't what led to my dad's, moral failures or lack of integrity. It was his choices and lack of healing and lack of self-awareness and lack of counseling. And I think as I matured, I realized, wow, you can be an integrous person in business and make a huge impact in the community, in some ways more than ministry. And I really fell in love with the bivocational life and world. And now I'm a lead pastor of a church, and I probably could engineer things to where I could leave business behind and try to multiply and grow the church and take more of an income from that. But I don't want to. I love business. I've been a part of growing and multiplying businesses. And one of the really cool things is the more I got to find out about my family story and my history, especially on my dad's side, I found out that my grandpa, who I didn't know super well because, again, being in a broken home and my dad not really being around, I rarely ever got to see that side of the family. But I found out that my grandpa was a bi-vocational pastor, that he owned a car dealership and also was a church planter. And
Dad's dad?
My dad's dad.
Okay.
And then my great-grandfather was a farmer and gave up part of his farm to start a church. So I kind of come from a long line of, I guess you could say, bivocational business-owning pastors. And so I've just kind of owned it. Like, I love it. I love being the bivocational pastor.
So I want to jump into that. Question though, how old were you? So how old are you when Dad leaves?
Yeah, he walked out at 5.
Okay.
And that's at least when we moved to Colorado away from California. And he stayed in Northern California with my stepmom and half siblings. And so I've got my mom here in Colorado, 2 older sisters. That's where I lived and was raised. And then my dad with 2 half sisters and a half brother that are younger than me. So I was kind of sandwiched in the middle. And growing up, there was summers I would go visit him and I'd see him work. And I mean, he made millions, lost millions, and was passionate about sales and marketing and leadership. Gleaned some amazing things, just to give honor where honor is due. He had charisma and leadership, and he taught me about sales, and he had a good work ethic, and he had that military background, and he truly also did have strong convictions about God and his faith, and somehow those always didn't make it to reality in the way he did relationships and the way he loved. It wasn't always fleshed out. There was hypocrisy and a double standard. And for a while there, like, I was a little bit jaded with God because of that. Remember in high school, I kind of, like, I knew God existed. It just made the most sense to me. I never denied that. But I didn't love God or serve God. I just knew he was out there, probably like my dad somewhere, busy doing something else. But I remember one night after sneaking out and vandalizing, and I would get an adrenaline rush from just kind of breaking stuff and being out late at night with friends and, teenage angst. And we landed in jail for a night for vandalism. I had to plead guilty before a judge, took the plea bargain to expunge it from my record if I would pay the restitution. And I remember God speaking to me in my heart, just, this isn't who I've created you to be. And when I pled guilty in front of a judge, but he said, I'll give you mercy. I'll expunge this from your record. The gospel made sense to me. It's like, oh, this is what Jesus did. He took my punishment. If I just plead guilt, like, hey, I am guilty. Yeah. You're innocent. I'm guilty. I'll take the plea bargain. Forgive me. And he'll wipe the slate clean. And so, my junior and senior year of high school was a big turnaround. Started a football Bible study that just exploded. We had 100 kids come into this thing, 5 different public schools. And I mean, that's what really gave me the heart to, like, I want to be a youth pastor, which I did. I got a youth ministry degree, Bible studies, biblical studies degree, and was a youth pastor for many years. And then, like I said, the family was growing. I needed to pay the bills. I remember when my wife came home from a Verizon store, and she said, "Hey, I saw a sign. It said now hiring. Like, what if you just worked at Verizon? You're good at communicating. You love technology." Yeah. I was like, "Oh no, I'm a pastor." And she's like, "Yeah, I get that, but it's been tough to, like, make ends meet, and maybe there's guys out there that do both." And I had just listened to a podcast about being bivocational and the benefits and how it can help your family and it can help the ministry. And so we prayed about it. I took a risk and applied and got the job, and I worked my way up over several years from just sales associate to store manager to multi-store manager to sales trainer, and fell in love with business. So it's pretty cool.
I was going to just ask you, so, that Verizon and that experience there comes
Yes.
about from financial need and a nudging from your wife, like, hey,
Yep.
got to make some money.
Yep.
When did you find out? Like, I remember that moment when I realized I'm good at sales and marketing. Like, I'm not good at a lot of other things, but I'm really good at this, so I'm going for it. When did that happen for you in the business space?
Yeah. Like I said, initially, I thought it was temporary so I could go be back in full-time ministry. And I think it was after several months and years, but there was many times where I was number one in the district, not just in the store, but in the district, and realized, wow, I really have a knack for this. And, the promotions would come quickly, and the commission, when you're based on commission and you do well, and then there's other people in the same role based on commission and they're not doing well, and I'm thriving and I love it, and they're saying they hate this. And so I think it was pretty quickly, probably a year into Verizon, that I realized, wow. I remember when they wanted me to be a store manager, I almost didn't want to, because I love just slinging phones and helping people and selling, and I would do stuff just so out of the box. Like, I would take a picture with every client and like we'd post it on their social media, and I had this whole mantra, like, I'm not a phone salesman. I help the American buying public with their communication needs and some of the largest purchasing decisions they make. When you add up technology, you got people's homes, you got their cars, but really between TVs and tablets and cell phones and smartwatches, which, our Verizon store sold a lot of those things. It wasn't just phones. And between their phone bill and it can add up. So for me, I'm like, man, I'm helping them with a large percentage of their budget, and they're going to buy from someone. That someone might as well be me.
Yeah.
So how can I earn their trust to make this happen? I genuinely believed they were going to have a better experience. So I don't know, the confidence just came naturally. And part of that's probably from dad and grandpa. Again, when I found out, like, oh, there's like some epigenetics here of my family having a sales. I mean, my grandpa owned a car dealership. Like, so sales is, my dad was a sales trainer. That's ultimately what his company became. He did so well in the auto industry, and then he made a sales training business. So yeah, I think I figured out when I started seeing the checks and I started seeing the promotions, I was like, okay, I have a knack for this. Yeah. But I think that alone wasn't enough to convince me that it was a calling, because I just kept thinking it was temporary. It was temporary. It was when my buddy actually said, would you start a business with me? That became the next fork in the road. And that was 2017, 2018, when I thought, wow, if I do this is going to take a lot more. It's one thing to be a youth pastor and work at Verizon.
Yeah.
And, eventually as Verizon started becoming more and more of my life, I had to delegate more and more at the church, but I was still able to juggle it all somehow.
Yeah.
But when my best friend said, would you start a company with me? That was kind of a sobering reality check of, wait, this is a commitment. This is going to be the next, at least 3 to 5 years of my life to help him get this off the ground. And if I say yes to this, I'm not just saying yes to paying the bills temporarily. I'm saying yes to being that bivocational minister.
So as you're journeying through, right, dad leaves a imprint on you. So that skews, sounds like a little bit of your view of God and relationship with God until you experience him in a personal way, right?
Yes.
Between you and him. And then dad's impact also skews just the view of business, right?
Yes.
Until you have that experience in a very personal way and find that out. So now you're at this new fork. There's probably people listening to this right now, right? Maybe they're not bivocational, but they're employed and they're at this fork. Like, what's going through your mind, and how do you wrestle with that? Because there's got to be this excitement, like, man, you see enough in me to want to go into business with me.
Yeah.
But then the, oh my gosh, or holy bleep moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be real. So like, what did you process through at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a mixture of emotions, right? There's excitement and thrill of the thought of going into business with a friend and really to be a part owner in that business, to have an equity stake, the potential upsides, and also just the freedom not having to be in the 9 to 5, cog of the wheel of the machine of a corporation, but getting to set our own schedule and chart our own course and just that entrepreneur spirit. But there was also the fear and the trepidation and the concern of, okay, well, how's this going to work? And is this going to be able to provide? And, there's an insecurity there of, what negative repercussions could this have on the family and our income? And I'm going to lose all my benefits. And, so we're counting the cost. I remember talking to my wife specifically and praying and slowing down, because my personality type, like, I'm ready to go. I'm an activator.
You jump and ask questions later.
I do. But that decision, I remember we slowed down, we prayed, and there was a few confirmations, I'd say. So if you're in this crossroads of life, thinking about maybe starting your own business or being in small business with a partner, or even just leaving corporate to go work for a small business, I totally get where you're at. And hopefully some of the ways that God confirmed it for me can bring you peace in your decision. So the first was my former Verizon manager walked in, and I was still managing the store, multiple stores. And I just remember this conversation where they just said, "Hey, Rob, I just want you to know that you've got what it takes to work for a small business. That's what I'm doing now, and I'm so much more fulfilled, and I loved working with you." And I just felt like inspired. They weren't even a Christian. They just said, "I felt inspired to come and share with you that you would really do well working in a small local business. Let me tell you a little bit about why it's been more fulfilling for me." They talked about the ownership and being able to set culture and not just have to regurgitate, all the red tape that you're given from corporate. And so, yeah, they just basically came by and visited the store just to share with me how amazing it's been for them leaving corporate for small business, and how now they're a part owner. They had vested equity, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, so I kind of tucked that away. Like, that seems like a confirmation. So I started talking to other people that are in small business. So, hey, if you've ever thought about being an entrepreneur or starting a business or being in a small business, go talk to people. Ask them about the upsides. Ask them about the downsides, the risk and the reward. And I started to do that. And I started to realize, wow, if you have a certain makeup and a personality type, and you're willing to have a threshold for risk.
If you're a Christian small business owner and you live in Northern Colorado, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. The Foundry is a Christian executive peer advising group that connects other business owners in the community to help you focus on your faith, your life, your leadership, and your business. Make sure to check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. Hey, just want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. If you're a small business owner, one of the things that you need to navigate to be successful is all things online and digital in terms of marketing and your messaging. Imprint Digital, they're the real deal. They are the professionals, and they know this world inside and out. Make sure to visit their website at imprint-digital.com.
It's actually an incredible journey, right? So that was the first confirmation. The second one was I put out some fleeces, and for those of us that are Christian, that's a Bible, story where a man was asked by God to do something pretty scary, and he said, "God, I need you to confirm it. I'm going to put out this fleece, and if it's wet and the ground is dry, I know it's you." And then he reversed it because that happened, and then he said, "No. If the ground is wet and the fleece is dry." And so it's a metaphor to say, God, these things need to happen. You list out some conditions, and if these conditions are met, I'm trusting this is you. So I said, he's got to be able to pay me this much, which I don't know how we're going to be able to do that. But somehow, even at the beginning of this new business, I got to be able to make at least this much. And I've got to have closure with Verizon, because the one thing that was really frustrating me was my commission kept changing. And so I said, well, if it stabilizes and I can figure this out, I'm going to take that as a sign to stay. But if they change it one more time, I think it was like the fourth time they changed my commission.
And it's not in your favor, right?
Oh no, each time it got worse.
Yeah.
And I would master it and make more money, and then it would get worse, and then I'd master it again. And sure enough, and I forget the third condition, but anyway, we got the first condition. Yes, I can. And I didn't tell him the amount. He told me, I want to pay you this much to come start this business. It was like, oh, boom, there's the first
check
condition. And then they changed my commission again. I thought, okay. And then the third thing, this is what it was. My wife needs to be on board, which I thought, there's no way. Like, she's going to opt for the security, right? She came to me after a couple weeks and said, I believe this is God, and this is your best friend, and you've got what it takes, and you're gonna find a way to provide and be in business. Go do it. We need to do this. So I was like, okay, all those things checked. So I have my former manager telling me, it's almost like the seeds were planted and my heart was ready and the idea was there. Then I have the fleeces, right? That was all put out. And then the last thing was, I need someone with some gray hair, a sage, some wisdom to sign off on this thing. Like, I need a mentor that and maybe even invests money. Like, because if it's one thing for two young guns that are ambitious, that just like want to go out there and start a business, make some money, to chart their own course. I mean, that happens all the time. But I need someone that knows business and finance to believe in us and put their money where their mouth is. So before we even started the business, we talked to someone that we knew that had gray hair, that had a wallet, that was willing to write checks. And we gave him our business proposal and our business plan and an investor guide, because we knew like we needed help. And so from the day one, we had someone that said, yes, I believe in this. I believe in the two of you. And here's a check to get you guys started. And so for me, it was like, man, I've got green lights across the board, and we took the leap of faith.
Man, so much good stuff there. And one thing I want to come back to, because you kept referring to those fleeces, those three things, as conditions. And I think we as Christians and other Christians do this all the time. It's like that condition, it's almost a demand from God versus a confirmation from God.
Right.
And talk about that, because I didn't hear you say at all, God, I'm demanding that it's this salary and that there's closure with Verizon and that your wife buys in. It was more of confirm this for me. And do you see that, jumping a little bit off topic, but still in the lane? Do you see that a lot from Christians where they make these demands? Like, you can't demand anything.
Yeah,
I think from God. So how do you delineate that?
Yeah, if you're a person of faith out there or contemplating faith, I would just ask who's really in the driver's seat and who's calling the shot. If God is the CEO, let's put it in business terms, then even if you're on the leadership team and you're the COO and you're the business partner, ultimately, if he gets the final say, which is what being the Lord of your life means, then you want his vision for your life to drive, just like you would want a CEO's vision to drive the company. But you also want to wrestle that out with him and discuss it with him and be able to come into alignment, right? So it's not just obligation and just pure submission. You want to follow and get on board and actually lead according to his plan, according to his vision for your life. So yeah, for me, it's less of demands and more of, hey, God, I want your best for my life because I know you're wiser than me. And I know you see the future I don't. And I know you know my heart better than I might think I want this, but then a year from now, regret it. So you know what? I've learned to trust you more than I trust myself. I've learned to trust the process more than I trust myself. And I've learned to trust advisors more than I trust myself. And certainly I've learned to trust my wife more than I trust myself. Now, I do trust when it comes to like competency and certain skills God's given me and my ability to discern. So I'm not saying like have zero confidence and just let other people run your life. No, have confidence, have convictions, know where you stand, and also like trust that God has a plan. And if he has a plan, let's try to figure out what that is. So for me, it was never here's the conditions you have to meet, and I'm bossing you around. I'm twisting your arm, God, and you're my vending machine, and I'm going to push your buttons, and you're going to give me what I want. It's more, hey, you're the CEO, totally your call. Just let me know, what do you think is best right here? I'm trying to follow you. And so I'm asking for these conditions to be met. If this is you, so I know it's you. And if these conditions aren't met, I'm going to believe it's not you. And if you have a better way of showing me, I always give God editing permission. So like, you want to give me a vision or a dream or send a prophet to say, you shall work for this new business. Hey, then that's great. But until then, I need these signs. Could you just work with me? And God is so good. He's a good dad, right? I think the biggest arc of my story is not trusting God as dad because of the pain of my father and my upbringing, and then learning to actually believe, oh, he's a good dad. He's an invested dad. He wants what's best for us, and he's wanting to speak. But he says he rewards those who diligently seek him. And I think we want it to be that he rewards those who half-heartedly seek him or seek him on the weekend. And he's like, no, if you just seek me with everything and actually pray and put out fleeces and at the end of the day, like you want to submit, like he'll show up and he'll give you those confirmations.
And then how many Christians do you see that just conclude that God is just going to be like their father?
Yeah.
And have a hard time connecting to God and doing those things because of that relationship that they have, which in just about everybody's case, it's a wounded relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's humans on the planet. So how did you reconcile that? I mean, was that just little moments? Was that, because we've spoken offline, right? A lot about this, and you've shared kind of some big moments, right? But was that just a lot of little experiences, or did you have a real big aha?
I'd say both. That's been my life journey, is God healing my father woundings and earning my trust that he's a good dad. The one being in the universe that wouldn't have to earn trust. He could just demand it, right? Or take us out if we don't give it. Like, trust me or else. But that's not his heart. He earns it. It's just, he's so humble. He's so patient. He's so kind. And he earns it through the way that he's revealed himself through the scriptures and just how time-tested and reliable, and the prophecies and just the historical evidence and Jesus and the way he lived and the resurrection. I mean, I could go on and on about all the claims of Christianity and how God is continually trying to build our trust and earn our trust. It's like, I think God's main question to humanity is, do you trust me now? Do you trust me yet? Yeah. Please trust me. But also individually and personally, like some of those points for me, like you said, there was big moments and small moments. Some of the big moments were the book Wild at Heart, shout out, John Eldredge, really, really helped me heal from some of those father woundings and begin to at least entertain the idea of trusting God as father. But going to trainings and men's retreats, the Wild at Heart boot camp, Crucible retreat, the Revenant process, like getting away, spending 3 or 4 days in a room with other men and with other people and connecting with God, giving God some breathing room and some margin to actually speak to your soul. And sometimes he does it through the other people in the room. Sometimes it's just a whisper in your heart and through your journaling, through nature, but really like getting away and giving God the time and space. You know, you see Jesus doing this all the time, right? He would go to a quiet place or a wilderness place, and God would encounter him there. So I think those were some of the big moments. And then there's the small moments, right? Which aren't small, but they can seem insignificant, but they're huge. Like tucking my kids in, just the faithfulness of like being at the dinner table with them and tucking them in at night and speaking words of affirmation. And there's been so many times where the Father heart of God will say, that's how I see you. That's how I love you. You know, even when I'm holding an infant or newborn, you know, I've got 6 kids, so I got 12 all the way down to infant. And whether I'm affirming my 12-year-old, like on the ski slopes, you got this, buddy. God will say, yeah, and you've got this, Rob. I love you like you love him. Oh my gosh. Or when I'm rocking my 2-month-old and I'm singing songs and God says, I sing songs over you. I love you like you love him unconditionally.
Yeah.
So I think parenting's been a huge father wounding healer for me.
Because you get to change that, right? Like whatever you didn't have and whatever you want to change about that story of your fathering when you're in that.
Yes.
It's God reminding you, hey, this is what I am to you, for you.
But that change comes with friction too. Like there's been times where in the flesh I've looked almost just like my dad. The anger and just over the years, right? And I've had to surrender alcohol. Alcohol runs deep in my family.
Does it?
Yeah. Dad had alcoholic tendencies. My sister did, who's sober for 2 years now. Shout out, Megan, if you see this. Proud of you. But we've had to really combat, alcohol, adultery, abuse. It's like it's all in the family line. And those things there's been little hints, little moments where I would scare myself and scare my wife and just like, that's not who I want to be, like the lashing out and the anger so it's the change. You said you can change the way that you father and parent. And I'm saying yes and amen. And also that comes with sacrifice and work. I mean, I've had to get counseling and love counseling, multiple different kinds of counseling and therapy and inner healing prayer and staying faithful in a local church and coming under submission to pastors and being disciplined to show up day in and day out. And it has not been an easy road. It's a lot of repentance, a lot of humility, a lot of forgiveness on my wife's part, mostly, and embarrassment. It's funny. We all want to be humble people, but none of us want humiliation. But the word humility it's a derivative of the word humiliation. So to be humble, you have to actually risk embarrassment and exposure. And there were just so many times I would get it wrong. And I think my wife says it's probably my strongest endearing quality to her now is like, I'm willing to admit it, and I think that's what made David a man after God's own heart. Like, he committed adultery, but when confronted with how wrong it was, he just repented and he got on his knees and he said, forgive me. And it's like, it takes a strong man to stand tallest on their knees when they're admitting they're wrong.
And as you were speaking too, you were talking back like, hey, generations back in your family name and lineage, like there's things in there, right? So generational sin,
yes, just
family line things and issues that you are going to stop with you and change that direction and change that family tree. And I think, for so many of us, you're talking to a man or whoever, and hey, I know maybe this goes one generation up, right? So your example, hey, alcoholism, right? And it's like, man, that goes to father. This goes up 5, 6, 7. Like that is rooted.
Yep.
And right, there's got to be a genetic component, a spiritual component, just a lineage component, and exposure in the environment. Like you're going to do what you see. And that's going to become a pattern and a habit and a wiring and all of that. So to break that, like it's strong held in so many ways.
Yeah.
So man, good for you.
Thank you.
And I think, for me, I have a family history book and it was really cool. I got to read back. So everybody calls me Matt Shoup. It's Shoup, Shoup.
Yes.
But it originally was Shoup, Schaub. So our family, originally came here on the boats from Sweden. So I mean, I literally read all the way back to that. But then I was able to grab that book and take it from, dad to grandpa to, 4, 5, 6, 6 stories back. And you start piecing this together. It's like, okay. I'm starting to see some things that have been here for a long time.
Yes.
Do we want to, there's a lot of military leadership. Thought that was really cool. There were some other things in there. I'm like, I don't want that for my family. And we're going to make that change. So good for you.
Yeah.
Man. Love that.
I appreciate what you're saying. There's the good, bad, and ugly of our heritage. And the good we want to maintain and redeem and leverage.
Yes.
Like I've inherited leadership. I've inherited some business skill. I've inherited communication, preaching. There's preachers far back in my family line. And similar to you, I've tried to trace it back. I didn't get quite as much accuracy, but I know we come from Ireland. There's a city in Ireland still to this day, Bray, Bray. And I know our family line goes through Robert E. Lee, so there's some military leadership. Yeah. So similar to what you're saying, and that's something my wife and I have strived to do is maintain and leverage and redeem the good, to acknowledge and heal from the bad and to repent of and totally cut out and stop the ugly, the good, bad, and ugly, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a journey. And one thing I'd say, if this is resonating with you guys out there, and let's say there is an alcoholic tendency in your family line, just to take that one example, I would just say tackle it head on and confront that thing.
Yeah.
I remember one night at 3 a.m., woke up and I heard this whisper in my heart, like, and it said, choose abstinence from alcohol for the rest of your life and you'll break this generational curse. Yeah. I was like, what? Because I know what the Bible teaches. It teaches moderation. It doesn't teach abstinence. Jesus drank wine, So I'm like, okay, Lord, you're going to have to confirm that. And then the next night, 3 o'clock in the morning, woke up, refrain from alcohol the rest of your life and you'll break this generational pattern. It's like, okay, Lord, this is a big commitment. I mean, I like a good IPA, like I don't know about this. And I started to make up things like, okay, maybe he's calling me to this because I'm a pastor and I don't want to be a stumbling block to other people that have a struggle with alcohol. Or maybe, like, what is this about, Sure enough, the third night, surrender alcohol. That was the word, surrender, for the rest of your life. And you'll be free of this generational curse and you'll take authority in a new way and be able to intercede for your sister in a new way. And just like, it would give me some sort of power over this. And I just decided to trust him. I didn't fully get it. I didn't fully understand it. And it's not a conviction that I push on other people, because I know that by and large, I think what the Bible teaches for people is moderation. But for me, God was calling me to abstinence. And that was 4 years ago now. And I said, yes, I wrote it in my journal, dated it, haven't touched it or tasted it since. And
if your life or business are cluttered up with junk right now, then you've got to reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts Hauling. Hulk Addicts can come out to your home or business to do anything from removing junk to appliances. Maybe you're demoing or doing construction on a property and you need it cleared out. Maybe you need a big dumpster dropped off that they can roll off later. Make sure to check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com. They are serving all of northern Colorado as well as up and down the Front Range. Hey, if you're a business owner and you need to do some renovation in your space or possibly build a building from the ground up, you have to connect with one of our sponsors, Mendel Construction. Mendel Construction is a commercial construction company that's been around since 1997, serving all of Colorado. They can do a small tenant finish all the way up to ground up construction of a new building for your business. Check them out at mendelandcompany.com. That's MENDEL and company.com. A big shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D was actually founded by my wife Emily and I back in 2005, and for the last 2 decades we've been here in northern Colorado, of one of the leaders in residential and commercial repainting, as well as most recently installing residential roofs. So if you need to paint, re-roof, you got hit by a hailstorm, we can take care of whatever your home needs from top to bottom. You can find us on the web at mendepainting.com.
I tackled that thing head on. And then I learned about epigenetics, which was so cool. I remember a pastor in a Bible study I was doing talked about how the study they'd done on mice. And what they did is they would introduce a smell into the cage, these scientists, and they would then shock the mice feet, and the mice would all jump. And they would do that repeatedly until they could introduce the smell, and the mice would jump without having to shock their feet because they were programmed and preconditioned by the smell. Well, then those mice mate and have baby mice, and they've never shocked the moms, and they've never shocked the babies. They've never shocked the fetus in the womb. And these babies grow up and they introduce the smell and they jump. Just because their dads were preconditioned to jump at that smell. Then the third generation, so let's just call it grandbaby mice. And again, the parents have never been shocked, only the grandparents. Now the grandbaby mice, they introduce the smell and they jump. And what they proved is that it's not just your genetics that's programmed, your hair color, eye color, height, all that stuff. Your epigenetics, right? The behavior underneath the choices you make and the habits that you form are preconditioned from your family. And you can change them, but it takes a lot of intentionality. First, it takes self-awareness to know, oh, this is something in my family line that I want to reform. And then it takes a lot of intentionality and like strong commitments, which for me is like abstinence, let's just say in this case, right? And then it takes a really good community that can mirror back to you when you're not yourself or when you're becoming those old patterns, you know? And so when I say tackle it head on, for you, it might not be alcohol. It might not be needing to abstain. But for me, it was like, whoa, this alcoholism runs so deep and this addiction runs so deep that now I get the science of what God was calling me to do. When I made the decision, it was in faith. Okay, God, I'm going to abstain. Now I look at the science. I remember the pastor saying that if you have a precondition to alcoholism, it's like, imagine that neurochemical pathway is already there in your brain. It's like you could get on that bike and the muscle memory, and you'll just remember how to ride a bike. Well, because your grandfather was an alcoholic, if you have too much alcohol and get drunk, your brain picks it up like riding a bike, even though you might not have a history of being drunk, but your family does. And so now I see the wisdom, like, oh, God is protecting me. God is answering my prayers. I get to be the chain breaker. But it came at me like trusting him and doing some extreme things that other people might think is legalistic, but saying, hey, I'm not judging you. You go ahead and have a beer. I know what I'm doing for my family, and I got to tackle this head on because of the epigenetics that I've inherited, right? And I love the word you use, chain, breaking the cycle. Bethany actually says my first book should be Chain Breaker.
Yeah.
Like how to overcome generational curses and habits.
And when you realize how everything stacks up, like that's a lot to shoulder, to carry, and you can't do it on your own. And you need God for that. But it's like, man, the struggle that you'll go through to confront that, right? Is you're the man confronting that in your family's story. Like that's not going to touch your kids.
Yes.
And it's like, cool, let it kick my ass, right? Because it's days like I know what I'm breaking. It kicks my ass some days, kicks your ass some days, right? But it's like, guess what? Like, Riley, you're not even going to know. Haley, you're only going to know the stories going back. You're not going to have that be part of your story. So that's super cool, man. I love that. I didn't think we were going to go here today.
That's good.
I thought we were going to talk about business and P&Ls and KPIs and which we can, but this is so great for men and for women, for anybody listening to this.
I love what you just said, like letting it crush you so your family can be free. It's like you're either going to be crushed by the consequences, right, of your behavior or the self-discipline of the behavior you want. So you might as well just crush yourself in the self-sacrifice and the self-discipline so that others can be freed. And ultimately, that's what the gospel is, right? Mm-hmm. Jesus allowed himself to be crushed for the generational sin that was not his, so that all of his children, aka his disciples, could be free from this stuff. So like, let's just take it on. Like that's true heroism, right? Is like sacrifice. Like you make the hard choices so your legacy, your kids, your posterity can be free from this. And ultimately that's America. What is the American dream? It's not just making all the money and the white picket fence and the perfect career path. It's no, we are going to leave England and the tyranny, right, of first King James and then King George later. We're going to break free of that and sacrifice. I mean, 40% of the pilgrims died in the first winter, but we're going to take on this curse, so to speak, that we've been handed, this bad deal, this bad hand. We're going to allow it to crush us so our kids and grandkids can have a better, hopeful future, right? And that's something that I've just been really wrestling with recently is when you have a vision, a hopeful future for your life, it'll call you through the pain of transformation necessary to endure the suffering that it takes to inherit the hopeful future. And like the Bible says, without a vision, we cast off restraint, or without a vision, we perish. Mm-hmm. And I think part of why I've been able to make hard choices and do hard things so that my family can have a better future is I can actually see it. Like I see us all around the table with our kids and grandkids, and they actually want to be there. They don't feel obligated. They want my counsel, right? It's like that's like the ultimate dream is when you have a family of their own volition and choice and love that want to be around you and in your home. And ultimately, that's the dream of God, right? He's like, I just want free kids that don't have to come and see me on Thanksgiving and Easter. I just want free followers that actually adore me and want to be with me forever.
Yeah.
And that's what heaven is, right? It's his free followers that have chosen to be with him forever.
Love that. Love that. Well, man, thank you for sharing all of that and just being open and vulnerable. That's going to help. It's going to help tons of people, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Where they're
Thanks
at.
for the questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, you said nothing was off limits, man. So we went there.
It's good.
I want to shift gears a little bit because we promised we would talk about this gosh, not even a year ago.
Yes.
I met you and Hunter, and I knew Hunter from the business world. I think I had seen you and Micah on Samson's podcast, but I really didn't know of you. And you guys sat me down and you're like, hey, I want to tell you about the Foundry. And we've got to talk about that because you're this bi-vocational, you're a pastor.
Yep.
You're awesome at sales and marketing. You were asked to help launch a company, which you did, and you rode that roller coaster, right? As that company grew. And now you're spending your time pastoring and then working with Hunter, who is your business partner in the Foundry, and just talk about that concept because I thought it was so cool, so unique what you're doing to intermingle these two worlds that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. About a year and a half ago, I started the exit of my first company and am now a co-owner in a second business called the Foundry Advisory with Hunter Wiley. And for both of
Hunter.
Yeah. And we just really hit it off. His company Beyond Blue started doing the marketing for my first company called Mighty Hand. And we just really connected and we had similar values and we wanted to bring faith to the marketplace and we wanted to create a space where entrepreneurs could combat the loneliness, get great counsel and coaching, and ultimately just do business together in community. And he actually had this idea called the Foundry, but right as he was talking about starting the Foundry, I was talking about transitioning away from Mighty Hand. What's next for me? I, at that point, had been doing that for 4 or 5 years and had some sweat equity built up in that company and was in the process of re-engineering my life to get even more fulfillment and more impact. And whenever you're feeling stuck, right, there's usually something that you're tolerating and you're contributing to allowing the status quo to go on because you're comfortable. And for me, it's like I knew there was something beckoning me, something calling me more than just construction. I didn't get into construction to do construction. I wanted to help my friend build a business, and I did that. So I was just feeling this unsettledness, like a holy discontentment that there was more for me. And I was talking to coaches and going through a life plan and the Patterson process and all that stuff, and just realized what I really want to do and what's the most fulfilling thing for me is like helping people get to where they say they want to go. And that even when I pastor, I'm not the coddling pastor, I'm the challenging pastor. Let me, provoke you on to good works in Christ. Let me challenge you and the narrative that you hold and exhort you to become all you're meant to be. And that was translating over into the business space and the coaching space. And so I was telling Hunter, man, if I could do anything after this, after Mighty Hand, I would do coaching and consulting and strategic planning. I was just falling in love with all that. And he said, well, I'm starting the Foundry. And he's like, I want to create a community of Christian business owners and entrepreneurs where they can find that kind of coaching and counseling and camaraderie you're talking about. And so right away, something clicked for me. It was like, oh, excuse me. There's a chance here I could do this again. I could build a business with one of my best friends, except this business is even more in my niche. And yes, I can go off and start my own coaching business, which I do have a sole proprietor, small coaching practice that's a fun side hustle for me. And I actually went on and did that and still do. But I could see it, the vision, because I'd already done it once with Micah, and I could just sense that here's an opportunity. Sometimes you just got to seize an opportunity and actually fight for it. I remember I was the one fighting for it with Hunter and saying, man, let me build this with you. He's like, okay, yeah, we'll see what happens. And I joined the initial group, and then I was like, hey, when can I be a facilitator? Like, I believe in this thing. How do I get equity in this thing? Like, well, let's just see what God does. And I just kept advocating and taking a stand. And I think once he saw my commitment level, like, well, Rob is serious, then we had that equity conversation, and he brought me into the leadership team. And so, now I'm the COO of the Foundry, peer-to-peer Christian advisory network for business owners.
So break it down, right? So you got a Christian business owner, their ears are perking up a little bit, right? Like, what is it? Is it a hangout club? Like, talk about the logistics of what we do? Because I'm a member.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what exactly happens? What does part of being a member look like?
Yeah.
And how does that play out?
Yeah. So the Foundry advisory, at the end of the day, and I say this with all sincerity, and I know it might sound cheesy, we're a family of Christian business entrepreneurs, and we're growing our faith and our businesses together. And the nuts and bolts of it are the monthly chapter meetings. We meet once a month in groups of 10 to 12 business owners around a conference table for 4 hours, and we do life together, and we have a devotion where we grow our faith together, and then we do check-ins and actually get vulnerable on where we're at so we can actually get to where we need to go. You can't get to where you need to go unless you're real about where you're at.
Yes.
And then we get into the nuts and bolts of business, and we swap P&Ls, and there's always someone who presents, and we double click on their business, and there's coaching, and there's counsel, and there's great content. We say the 5 C's. It just helps us remember our values, right? The first one, community, real friends and business together. Business can be a lonely place. It's better together. So let's have friends and marvelous comrades on the journey together. Second is care, which goes along with the first one, but support when it matters most. I mean, I can't tell you how many business owners now there's 43 in the network, but also just being in business and building Mighty Hand with Micah. I mean, there were so many crisis moments, whether in the business or our families or COVID and the government, and just having people that actually care and can send, whether it's a text message or whether it's a gift card or whether it's a hug. I mean, that stuff matters, right? And then the third C is the counsel. And we like to say it this way: great advice, better questions. Because like you're doing on the podcast here, and then you got me all opened up, and it's the questions that really unlock something for the entrepreneur, not just shooting on people like you should do this or should do that. It's, hey, what do you think is best for your business? And then they usually have the answer. Okay, by when can you get that done? And so really, the counsel is digging it out of them. And then the fourth and fifth C, the fourth is content. That it's not our main thing. We're not a small business development center. I mean, you could find books and podcasts anywhere, but we do want to have some good content where people can learn more information, and we can swap books, and we can, really grow our acumen together. And then lastly, connections, which slightly different than community. What we mean by connections is just networking opportunities and referrals. We're not a leads group, right? That's not the point. That people don't join to just get more business. However, when you have trusted allies, well, you end up doing business together. I've had a lot of members come to me and say, oh yeah, my membership's paid for because these 5 people they're all clients of mine. So it is cool that we get referrals that way through the group.
Well, I think we're now doing business with like 3 or 4 new people and vendors that we never would have known if it wasn't for that.
Come on.
I just remember rolling in one day, and I'm sitting across in one of the meetings, and I'm like, man, you look familiar. There was a guy visiting, and I taught him Spanish when he was in elementary school.
What?
And I was like 23. And we're sitting in the group, and he's like, I thought that was you. And then we connected after the group. We're gonna grab some coffee. He's just launching a business.
Yes.
So, and don't discount the the content, because the speakers that you bring in, it's like these are people that are sharing their expertise. Like Ty just talked HR. Like, that's good to know.
Absolutely.
I was about to get sued for that.
Yeah.
now
you're right.
Know. So yeah, great content, and it's very unique because I think there's a lot of business entrepreneurial groups and clubs and peer advisories, but when you can layer that deeper purpose of why people are in things, and I love that, because there's always the worldly boots on the ground, like here's the issue at hand, perspective, and there's a business
Yes.
solution, but there's also that faith overlay. It's like, how is God part of this?
Yeah.
Where are you leaning into God? And I also love that the struggle or the challenge or the issue or the question that a member typically brings, that's not the question they need answered.
Yeah.
And we dig and we poke and we
Yes.
prod and we look at things from different angles. You know, it's like, you don't have a marketing issue right now. You have a life purpose issue
Yeah.
that you got to figure out.
Absolutely.
And, I even remember when I came with my issue, it had nothing to do with what I thought it was. So it was really cool.
Right.
So what's the vision for that? You know, we're in northern Colorado right now. I know that you guys are actively speaking with people, Boulder, Denver Metro. You know, you're looking to grow and expand. You just purchased a building.
Yep. Yep.
Where do you see this in 3 years, 10 years from now?
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, we want to be the household name for Christian business owners, where just like when people think of financial planning with a biblical worldview, they think of Ramsey Solutions.
Yeah.
When you think of planning your business, growing your business from a biblical worldview in a community of like-minded Christian entrepreneurs, we want the household name to be the Foundry Advisory. So I mean, we see it going nationwide. I think the short-term vision is let's launch 10 chapters. Right now we have 4. In order to launch more, we have to have committed and trained business owner facilitators, which we have a pipeline of people interested in that. And so that's kind of the immediate next milestone. And then ultimately Northern Colorado and the Front Range, just having groups up and down the I-25 corridor, and then ultimately going interstate. We have a couple people already interested in launching a group in California and launching a group in Iowa. So we'll see. I mean, it's all for us. It's all about relationships and the organic growth. We're not in this just to. I mean, if God wants to hockey stick scale this thing, then we'll go along for the journey. But we'd rather grow healthy and slow than dysfunctional and fast. Yeah. And that's something that we've learned, well, like you said, from the content that we've been receiving and the counsel. That's been some of what we've gleaned is, hey, let's do this right and let's do it methodical. And then let's let the supply and demand, and also God decide the speed of the scale.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate what you said about not discounting the content. And yeah, I don't want to demean that, because you're right. It's been excellent and it's curated. I think that's a good point is, I mean, there's so much business information out there. I trust when a Foundry member says, read this book, I'm like, okay, I should read this book. So curated content is a valuable thing.
And Sarah Jane's doing such a good job, because we had an event set up that we were gonna take kind of one angle on it with leadership language, and she reaches out. She's like, I think there's going to be better value, more value, cumulatively for the community if we do it this way. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Let's do it this way. So you've got
you're going to
people
come
that
in and do some disc profile and some leadership things and help people figure out their style of communication. I'm excited for that.
That's going to be super fun. We're gonna do that in the summertime now. So
yes,
loving it. Well, man, we're wrapping up our time. This hour has flown by, and thanks for being real. Like
Absolutely.
I love some of these episodes. I know where we're going to go, and we go there, and then some just take a turn. You know, I think for the better, right? And then there's going to be so much.
Thanks for letting me go there. And you know, I'm a preacher, at least part time, so I know I did a lot of the talking. But thank you for the questions and for listening, and excited to see what nuggets people pull out of this. And
it's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah.
So we close up and wrap up the podcast same way for everybody. So you went to the make your mark. I don't know if we're going to call this the make your mark or leave your story wall, but you've got a statement that you want to leave with the world when you leave it. And you wrote that down when you came in. Yes. What is that?
Don't let your calling or career compromise your connection. And that goes back to my dad and how his connection was severed with my mom because of the choices he made, but the career and the success, going to his head. And that happened for me too. Like, that's part of my journey we didn't talk about is, I was so zealous for ministry in the early years of my marriage. Like, we struggled in about year 6, 7, and now we're on year 13. So about halfway through so far, that season was really tough, and just we were on the brink of a divorce, and we got the counseling, and I had to slow down. I actually took a year off of ministry, and while that's part of the Verizon journey that was really helpful, is I was able to pay the bills while not having the demands of ministry, and that's what helped rebuild our marriage. But yeah, connection, I've realized, is at the end of the day what it's all about, with connection with God and yourself, connection with your spouse, connection with your kids. And anytime I've let ministry, which can be very demanding, or entrepreneurship, which can be very demanding, come in between my connection, it just makes life not worth living. Because if you're like constantly late for dinner, let's just take a practical example, because you're always at the office and you start to lose that precious connection. It's like, well, then why are you making the money to provide for the family that you never see? It's like the people are what make it all worth it. And I've realized connection is a precious thing. And I think I presumed too often on the strength of a connection or a commitment, thinking, well, yeah, we had that conversation that was unresolved, but particularly with my wife, she'll still be there. Like our love will still be there. But you stack enough of those unresolved conversations up, and all of a sudden that connection, it just starts to become strained, if not severed. And divorce almost snuck up on us. And luckily we were able to reprioritize connection, but it came at the loss of a lot of things. I lost a lot of other momentum in other areas of my life in that season, because I had to put marriage number one again. And if you just do that throughout and more methodically, and you maintain connection, then you can have all these other things. One thing I've learned, a simple tool, when I'm running at the gym, I'll just say my priorities in order: Christian, husband, father, pastor, entrepreneur, student, because I'm a lifelong student. I'm still reading and learning. And I have to say them over: Christian, husband, father, pastor, business owner, student. And it's helped me keep it straight. Yeah. And then when I get out of alignment with that, it's like, well, wait a second. I say my wife's number two, like second to God. Am I really treating her that way? And if I'm not, and I listen to her feedback, and I get my community involved, and then I reprioritize. Yeah. So,
well, yeah. Man, I know a lot of people that haven't figured that out, are in the process of figuring that out, and makes a difference, man. So thank you. Thank you for being here. You're making a huge impact in the community, in the world, and just thanks for being you, man.
Yes.
Sharing your story, and we'll do another episode for sure.
Thanks for having me.
So Rob Bray, that's a wrap. Great. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here, and please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. I would be extremely grateful if you would go to mattshoup.com and click on the free tools and download those. On my website, you'll find that I've got some things for you wherever you are on your journey in life, leadership, and business. Start with those free tools. Maybe next, check out a couple of my books, my video coaching series, or maybe consider even coming to spend a week with me in Spain on one of my leadership adventures.